Morning. Welcome back to another self-tuning Subaru question and answer session. I'm going to go through and just basically answer any questions that you've got about tuning your Subaru, tuning the ECU, whether it's the standard ECU, Link, Civex, ESL, any other ECU. Basically the principles of tuning them are the same across the board. So before I start taking questions, just to give people a chance to sort of get in, get themselves comfy in front of the screen, or to blank out the screen so that they don't need to look at me. Questions, if you've got a question, put a Q in front of it, and then ask your question. Give as much detail as you can. Obviously it's limited by space in the box. But if you can carry it over a couple of boxes, then that'd be great. At least I'll have the information in front of me to actually try and answer it as best I can. Before going on to that, I just wanted to kind of just reiterate, really, as far as self-tuning your Subaru, it's important to follow the process correctly, and the process really revolves around safety. So it's safety for the engine and for the car in general, and safety also for you and other road users. So if you're doing it on the road, obviously make sure that the road conditions are suitable for a little bit of spirited driving. You don't need to be breaking the law, but just make sure that you're in the right place, like a clear road, ideally without any turnings coming onto it. But make sure if you're going to be messing around with the ECU, making changes to the ECU, that you know what you're doing. And I've always said, it's the data that leads the decisions that you make. So, as part of the data, make sure that you've got a wideband in the car. I use a Innovate LM2 because I move from car to car. But if you're tuning your own car, it's most likely you would want to look to put in a wideband gauge, not the standard narrowband, because that is rubbish and it lies to you. So don't ever tune on the basis of the narrowband sensor. Wideband will tell you exactly what's going on. There's all kinds of makes of those. Innovate, AEM, they're essentially using a Bosch wideband sensor, which is really accurate. Lots of issues with them not lasting a particularly long time, but wideband is needed, right? Don't ever be making changes hoping that it's all right because the narrowband is telling you it is. It might not be. I'd also say make some deck cans. I've done a video on it. Watch the video, make a set of those, bolt them onto the engine, onto the inlet manifold. It is absolutely imperative to do this. You'll see pro tuners tuning without them. I always wear deck cans, but you will have seen other videos of other people in other countries that tune without them, and they're relying on the knock control on the ECU. The ECU lies to you, doesn't hear things that it should do, and it hears things that it shouldn't do. When you make a set of deck cans like the ones that I made in the video, you can hear everything, and you can hear the start of detonation, not just bad det. You can hear the little crackles and tickles of the initial part of detonation. I'd also say data log a lot, and I mean a lot. Try and get your head around all the data that's in there. I've done a video on that. I'm going to be doing more videos on this very soon, because the data tells you what's going on. And once you can interpret the data properly, you can make whatever changes that you want, or just understand what's going on, even if you're not into or not prepared to self-tune your car yourself. Information is king. Download your ROM and work with your ROM. If it's been tuned already, get the ROM ID and work with a base standard ROM rather than your tuner's map. And again, use the data that you're getting in the data logs to actually see what's going on and how it compares with what's in the actual ROM file itself, to see whether it's above target, below target, and just generally how it all fits together. Data log for ages. Every time you're out in the car, data log. See what's going on. I would also say, there's lots of people that will share their ROMs online on Facebook groups or like ROM Raider forums. That's their ROM. I wouldn't ever trust that for your car. If I had 20 Subarus here, obviously not in my office, but at the dyno, they would all need different maps. So one map from one car isn't really going to work on another car. It could be dangerous, could blow your engine up. Start with baby steps and work up from there, rather than just loading someone else's ROM, which might just corrupt your ECU entirely. So yeah, that's it really. Data log, deck cans, wideband, and understand what's going on. And it's an iteration process. Don't expect to do the map in a couple of days or a day. When you're first doing your car, it will take ages. You'll be out driving, data logging, seeing what's going on, just trying to get your head around like which bit of the map changes which bit of the data, and it will take a while to actually do that. I can do it quicker now because I've been mapping Subarus for 18 years now. It's all I do, apart from these videos now. And I've got no idea how many Subarus I've mapped over the years, but it's lots. It's all I do. And yeah, if you feel like you're on your own at any point in time, there is the Academy side of things that I run on here, which is also like a Discord group. So there's chat rooms and those sort of things where you're not on your own. There's other people. There's me giving advice, giving feedback, giving help. So have a look at that if you're considering it. So hopefully I've got some comments coming on here. Yep, right, okay, loads. Evening guys, evening. Hi Stuart, hi Kavanis, hi Fred. Looking fantastic as ever. I've just had a shower actually. It's bloody hot here today. Not that I'm complaining, I love it warm. But 30 degrees outside, plus the heat of a dyno is not the best. Right, hi Paul. You would never speed. Ecology, yeah. Okay, right. Okay, nice question. Right, how different is wastegate duty cycle in the dyno and on the road? I've noticed that in hub dyno there's 8% difference, 3,500, 4,600 area. I'm guessing on the hub dyno you're having to put more wastegate duty in to get to the target boost. It depends on the dyno. The dyno dynamics that I use most often up at Surrey Rolling Road, the load up of that is actually fairly similar to driving on the road. And most cars, like a 5-speed gearbox car, I'm running that in third gear, and the acceleration and the time it takes to build up the load generally is about the same as actually out in the real world. What I try to do is make sure that the actual wastegate duty that it's needing to get to make the boost that I want is kind of between the initial and the maximum. Don't want it sort of below the initial, because you're always going to get boost spikes if you're doing that. Some other dynos where they're a lot more free flowing, you actually end up having to put a lot more wastegate duty in there to actually make the target boost. And when you finish tuning, you have to be dropping the wastegate duty back or taking it out on the road just to test it in the real world. Ooh, right, good question, Fred. Right. Right, as I've said, the standard ECU is really, really good. And once you can map the standard ECU and understand what's going on, it doesn't matter what ECU you're presented with, whether it's Link or Cyvex or Haltech or ECU Master, anything else. The only difference is the software and some of the things that they call the elements of it. So once you've got your head around how and what you're trying to achieve, you kind of work backwards from the results that you want to get to how you're going to get there. So be it the fuel map, like on a link ECU, which I think you're considering, Fred, there's 3 different types of fuel map sort of setups that you could run on there. Some of them are more logical than others, but once you know what you're trying to achieve results wise, it's just a matter of getting your head around the elements of the ECU to actually figure out how to get there. So how the boost control works, how the knock control system works, how it's going to move through the tables to actually get to the actual ignition timing that it's adding, or the amount of fuel that it's adding. But if you've learned how to do it on the standard ECU, applying that to an aftermarket ECU is a lot easier in some ways. When is the right time? You'll know when the right time is. I think in your particular case it's pretty close on the standard map. The Link ECU or an aftermarket ECU, whether it's Link or Haltech, is going to give you some extra benefits. Right, Manuel Bergil. I'm just about to fit a 3-port Fuji Racing adjustable fuel pressure regulator with gauge on 440cc and just injectors. How do you set the pressure? So take the vacuum hose off the fuel pressure regulator while the car's idling, or have someone keying the ignition on to actually get the fuel pressure there. But it should be set to 3 bar, give or take. If you're running right at the top end of what the injectors can cope with, then you might want to run slightly higher fuel pressure. Like with the 440 injectors, they kind of max at about 350 horsepower. So if you're trying to get to 360 or 370, then you might want to run slightly more fuel pressure. You obviously want to be very careful running too much fuel pressure, because it does generate heat in the fuel, and then that makes it run leaner. So be careful with that. But 3 bar with the vacuum hose off, and when you put the vacuum hose back on, it will drop down to about 2.4 bar, depending on what the vacuum is that your engine generates. Sharpus Maximus, does an aftermarket catback exhaust need mapping? I think the thing that I say to my customers when they come up to me for mapping, they always, I don't know why, they all say, "Oh, what can I do next?" Is anything that you're adding or changing on the car that you think is going to increase the power needs at least checking. So if you've got access to laptop and install the ROM Raider or ECU Edit software, Tactrix cable, data log what's going on, get a wideband in there, set deck cans, and you'll be able to see what's going on, and the data will tell you. Or take it back to your mapper and get them to check it over. I say to my customers, it's at least worth checking at the very least. Right, VF39 on WX, everything else to support it. It's running an SCI top mount. Big difference going to front mount. Yes. Yeah, it's probably another on a what year's your okay? Yeah, probably another 10% extra power on a front mount, maybe slightly less than that. But it works so much better a front mount. The higher, the faster you go, the better they work. Whereas the top mount is the other way round. You obviously get less heat soak with the front mount as well. So if you're doing quarter miles, it's much better from that perspective. So you can map it closer to the edge and leave it closer to the edge. Whereas with a top mount intercooler, when you finish mapping, you know, always take a couple of degrees, 2.5 degrees out sometimes, just to give it a bit of safety margin for heat soak. Because if you're sitting idling with a top mount and then decide to pull away from traffic light Grand Prix, you know, under bonnet temperatures are massive, particularly when the weather's like it is today with 30 odd degrees in the UK. Right, Lauren. Yeah, the better way to quantify how much to change injector latency, if yours is unknown, or just guess and check. Yeah, in my opinion, it's a case of making changes. You know, if it gets better, then, you know, make a bit more of a change, see whether it gets better or worse. Experiment, data log, and then sort of iterate. I think that's probably the easiest way. Data always leads the decisions, in my opinion. Right, Paul. Hi, Paul. Congratulations on your first question. Right, so I have a standard A4 WRX, 72,000 low mileage, good STI intercooler and pink injectors. Can I fit this and get tuned a couple of weeks later without causing bore wash? Car currently has a 3-inch exhaust K&N filter. If your lambda sensor's working and everything is kind of working okay, then the car will start idle. You'll be able to cruise off boost, and the ECU will make corrections based on what the lambda sensor is telling it. So it will tell it that it needs less fuel. So when you first start it up, it will chug a bit and bit of black smoke to start with, but it will correct that down. But it will only do that in closed loop. So it will only do that up to, say, 3,000 RPM, only do it while it's off boost. As soon as you go on to boost, it's going to drown it. So if you can drive for 2 weeks off boost, then yeah, by all means fit them. I certainly wouldn't leave it to the morning of mapping or the day before mapping, because if you split a seal and you haven't got a spare one, then you know that's a bit of an issue. But yeah, you can drive it off boost, so drive it to the mapping session or drive it to work and back or whatever. But on boost, it's going to drown it. Ooh, right, just bought a GFB wastegate actuator. Default spring load is for 12 psi. Would this be okay to run on a stock tune, stock internals? 2 litre Forester Mark 1. Oh, you mean an SF, SF5? 12 psi. I think on the SFs the standard boost target is way less than 12 psi. I think it's something like 10, but that's just a thought in the back of my mind. If you have that as the wastegate spring, and then you've then got the standard map that is adding more wastegate duty, so it's going to run more than that. It's going to probably hit boost cut, in my opinion. Not saying fit a boost cut defender, but it's going to over boost quite a lot. So I would say needs tuning. Right, let me get rid of that. Bear with me a second. Right. Okay, that keeps popping up. Right, so Miguel Bastos, some videos back I asked on a stock STI 2007 Hawkeye the Max safe power, said around 360. Yep. Car was tuned and the results are 332 wheel horsepower. Okay. Okay. How is he getting the wheel horsepower figure, Miguel? Because in my experience, a lot of the road dyno figures that are produced are utter bullshit, basically. They make them up to suit what the people want. To get it accurate, it needs to be an absolutely flat road. You need to know the exact weight of the car to the precise kilogram, how much fuel's in there to the precise kilo, what the weight of the people in the car are, all the bits in the car, the half a Subaru that's probably in the boot, the frontal area of the car, the drag coefficient, if you change that with splitters and various little bits on there, all of that makes a massive difference to the actual way that a car's accelerating. If you've got any wind, again, not you personally, but any wind in the environment, then it changes the figures. And it's just, in my opinion, they're a random number generator. Fine if you're looking at it as a way to compare what it was at the start of mapping to what it was at the end of mapping, as long as you're accounting for the weight going down because you're using fuel, which again is guesswork because you can never tell exactly on a Subaru fuel gauge how much fuel has been used, but it gives you an idea. I wouldn't ever trust the figures. I've seen lots of cars at the dyno where they've been told it's 350 wheel horsepower, which is like 420 horsepower, and you know, I get it on the dyno, it's about 340 brake horsepower, so I don't trust them. Ooh, right. Okay, I'll come back to that, Stuart, because that's not really about tuning, but I will come back to it at the end. Right. I'm trying to find the questions in here. Right. Okay, Zed. Hello, mate. Right. How are you doing, Zed? Right. Going back to an issue having with closed loop air fuel learning on cruise light throttle. You're learning a lot. Okay, so if it's having to, okay, is it adding too much fuel and the ECU's taking it out, Zed, or is it not adding enough fuel and the ECU's having to put it in? If the ECU's having to put it in, it will eventually learn to add some in at that last part of the MAF range, sort of 30 to 50 grams per second. So if it adds, let's say 5% there, it will continue adding 5% all the way through once it's out of closed loop. It might take a while because it's not an area that you're normally in, that 30 to 50 grams. You're kind of always passing through it, but it does eventually learn it. So you can limit it by resetting the ECU every now and again. It will clear that. Or you could adjust the MAF curve in that area just to stop the ECU making or having the potential for carrying it into the learning. So if it's adding 5% to get it to 14.5, 14.7, then if you add 5% to the MAF curve in that region, it will do what it needs to do. Probably get rid of that air fuel learning, and then it's got no potential for taking it further. Right, I can tune the wastegate actuator 5, 7, 10, 12, 15, 17 and 22 psi. Yeah, 22 psi on a TD04 is just going to be blowing hot air. It's not going to make much power at that. What ECU have you got in there? Is that standard ECU unmapped? If it is, then definitely make sure you got some deck cans on it. Definitely make sure you got a wideband in there. If the air fuel ratio is fine with the 12% wastegate spring and it's not detting, then happy days. But I suspect that it'll probably hit boost cut, because boost cut is probably on that. Off the top of my head, is going to be about sort of 1.1 bar, so 16 psi. So with a bit of wastegate duty from the standard map, it's probably going to get to that, unless you're running without the boost control set up with just a straight hose from the turbo to the wastegate, in which case you get no boost control, but it will just run wastegate spring. From Portimao, awesome. But it's hot down there at the moment. Very nice. Okay, Stuart asked about suspension setup for JDM Hawkeye STI. I've tried lots of different coilovers. I've had what did I go? XTC. I've had Nitrons. I've had BCs, and to be honest, the BCs were not bad. Certainly for the cost, they were very adjustable. Get the spring set up right. You can change the spring rates if you want to. The standard spring sizes, so you can buy them from Demon Thieves or wherever. And they're reasonably easy to set up, but the quality of the components isn't amazing. So expect the top mount hard bearings to die after a couple of years, or start knocking at the very least. Personally, I love the pedals that I've got on the Forester, and that I had on the previous Forester STI. They lower it down. It's nice. It handles the roads and the potholes that we've ridden with here really nicely. So I personally recommend the pedals, but pedals do a set of coilovers as well if you're wanting to adjust the height, but you can always fit lowering springs if you need to. Right. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Okay, bonus question. Being offered a Simtech ECU to go with it, but I'm not looking for big brake horsepower. Is it worth it? Also great how to video fuel. Oh, okay. What was the car again, Paul? My memory. Right, 04 WX. Is it worth it? All you're going to get is the ability to run it without the MAF sensor. The MAF sensor isn't an issue, in my opinion, on a new age, unless you're running over 400 horsepower, which you're not going to be doing on a WX. You'll get some extras like anti-lag and launch control. Whether you want to use them or not is up to you, but that's probably the only advantage, in my opinion. I presume you're talking about the newer Simtech, which is like the GEMS board. It's a nice enough ECU. There are better ones, but it's a lower price one. If it's the older Alcatech ECU, which was sold as Simtech, then perfectly adequate, but again a budget ECU, and the company are no longer selling them, and support is non-existent. So I'm not sure that you'd actually gain anything. Certainly for the spec, you're probably not going to gain any power, but you'll get a couple of toys with it. Right, it said the ECU is adding fuel in, so it was rich. It's the other way around. So if it's adding fuel in, it's thinking it's lean. So if it's adding 5% of fuel, it thinks it's leaner than 14.7. So you know, it was slightly lean. Hi, Rob. Right. Right, people answering their own questions here. That's cool. Yeah, hey Ecology. If it's a stock ECU, stock map, definitely get some deck cans on it. Definitely get a wide band in there, just to be sure. It's not worth blowing the engine up for the sake of a wastegate spring choice. I don't know where you're based. If you were based in the UK, I think that would make a great video for ghetto tuning. And yeah, but yeah, if you're not in the UK, wideband deck cans definitely. All right. Okay, well, we're jumping off the tuning, but not a problem. Otherwise, I'll forget to come back to them. Tuning question: best choice on brake discs and pads for a blob-eye STI. Brakes are terrible. I have tried and used in the past Performance Friction Z-rated pads. Love those on the standard discs. I've used the DBA discs, and I think they were brilliant. With the standard pads, again, brilliant. The Performance Friction discs with Performance Friction Z-rated pads, I thought that was an awesome combination. At the moment, I've got DBA Extreme, the orange ones. I can't remember what the make of those, or what the spec of the pads are, but I've got those in Forester STI. I think they're awesome, and I'm just about to put some of the DBA T2, I think they are the T2 discs on the Forester. I'd look at those personally. They're a pretty good price point for the standard STI Brembo setup. Braided lines make a big difference as well. Right. Neil, adding an extra silencer on a 3-inch system as exhaust getting too loud now. Well, I'll need to check the map. If you've got the wideband in there, air temp and an intercooler and knock meter, and the KS3 is actually pretty good, pretty accurate. I used to have one of those in the race car until when my bottom end was going at Knockhill, and it was just flashing the whole lap. I switched it off. Obviously I just needed to get over the finish line. If you've got those, then you know, go by what your wideband's telling you, go by what your KS3 is telling you, and yeah, you'll be fine. But check. Yeah, I've not run the KWs myself, but they are a good system and very well tested at the Nürburgring, so it's a good setup. Yeah, the BCs love to seize if you neglect them, which obviously you did. Yeah. And then proceeded to try and rescue them. Yeah, with the BCs, it's like wind them all the way out, copper slip around the bottom part of the section that goes into the hub mount, to give yourself a chance. And the same with tines, they love to corrode, and max beading rods and whatever the other cheap ones are. But yeah, put as much copper slip on those, because once they start rusting, they're dead. Ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. All right. Speak to the limits of an OE stock block regarding boost timing and heat tolerances. Are you talking about a EJ257 block? If you are, in my experience, the liners start splitting at about 450 horsepower. It's not an instant, but they start going oval at about 450. Even with the closed deck insert, which I think is looks pretty, but it doesn't solve the problem. The liners split halfway down, and it's just a weakness that there is there. Pinned and closed deck insert helps it, but the stock block, the liners are only 5mm thick on a EJ257, so there isn't a lot of meat there. They wiggle and wobble, and eventually weaken, go oval, or eventually split completely. Stock 2 litre or 207 block, or EJ207. I've run those. 700 horsepower on those, 730 I think it was. Did 640 with the standard pistons and rods in there as well, standard crank. EJ22 blocks, the liners on those start splitting at about 750 horsepower in my experience, and that gets quite expensive. Midlands, now I go out to pole position in Wolverhampton every month or a couple of times a month, so if you wanted to bring it down there, we could do a video on ghetto tuning, not a problem at all. Right. How are we doing time wise? Right, I normally cap these at about an hour. If you've got questions, get them in early, because that last 2 minutes tends to be mental and I miss a load of questions that appear at the end. Okay, right, Mr. Cat Cool, 13 plate or 13 JDM STI auto. Okay, is it normal after flashing the ECU for the car? Usually shuts off after coming to a stop and really low idle. Yeah, it has to learn the drive-by-wire throttle control. So if you let it idle for a couple of minutes before pulling away, it will just kind of get its head around where it is. It is pretty normal for a drive-by-wire car to do that, and even more important on the auto. It just takes a little bit of a while just to get used to what it's doing. But yeah, entirely normal. Yeah, Fred, your EJ257, you know, there are other tuners that will send them to the moon, you know that. But if it was my engine, I've taken a 257 to 650 horsepower. Admittedly, I got the liners taken out and put top hat sleeves in there, like Darton sleeves, and that helped it, but the head gaskets still go for fun at that sort of horsepower. Yeah, 450 crank horsepower, but it varies depending on you know what you're talking about. Yeah, crank horsepower, so a 450 crank to you guys is about 400 wheel horsepower, I think. Alright, what are my opinions on turbo timers? I think I covered that in one of the videos of 10 things not to buy. I think they're a complete and utter waste of time, waste of money, and yeah, really annoying. If you've got a fuel leak or an oil leak and you're trying to switch off the engine and trying to find how to switch off the turbo timer, it could be potentially very dangerous as well. I have had that on the dyno where exhaust manifold caught fire because there was power steering fluid leaking onto it. Couldn't switch off the engine quick enough. Turbo timer or handbrake on, off. They hadn't wired it in correctly. Luckily, there wasn't any damage, but it could have been really bad. So I don't like them. Up for a street tune in the area? No. Dyno is way better. Way better. In that area, there's no roads really that are suitable for it, and I don't like being a passenger while someone else is driving. No offence to your driving, but I've had bad experiences with people trying to impress me with how quick their car is or how quick they drive, and been across roundabouts and into fields and all kinds of things, and it's just not worth the risk. So dyno is the perfect place for it. It's safe for the car, it's safe for everyone else involved. Right, EJ22. It is almost bulletproof. Almost bulletproof. I've broken 2 of them at 800 horsepower, but only by slight fractures in the liners, but the blocks were 30 years old basically. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I love them. Yeah. Right. Right. After a reflash, is it common to reset the ECU or leave it? Right. On the 16-bit ECU, so in the UK that's up to the end of 2005, but yours is a 32-bit US version. 2004, I think yours is. But on the 16-bit ECUs, they reset when you're reflashing them. On the 32-bit, it kind of half resets it, but if there's any sort of fuel learning in there, a lot of the time that stays in there after a reflash. So if you've only just reflashed it and there's no learning in there, there's no need to do a reset. If you've been driving it for a long while and you just want to clear out that data that's been held in the ECU, then by all means do a reset. It's not going to make much of a difference. It just means that it's not going to have that information there. So if you're trying to sort of see whether the fuel trims are still right after a reflash, it's probably best to reset it. Am I planning a rolling road day or a meet anytime? I was toying with the idea of doing a Nürburgring trip, but it's difficult because a lot of the people that watch this are US based. On previous videos I've asked people to put a note of where they come from, and it is wild. Sort of Africa, Asia, Israel, Russia, Sweden, Norway, Australia, Canada, Caribbean. So doing a meet is probably an impossibility, and I don't really want to do kind of a little sort of UK meet for the UK people. If you're ever around when I'm at a rolling road, by all means drop me a message and say you want to come down and say hi, then great. A few of the guys that are in the academy have done that a few times down at Surrey Rolling Road. And if they're in the academy, I don't mind them sitting with me in the car while I explain what I'm doing while I'm mapping the car, and customers are fine with that as well. But yeah, it's difficult. Rolling road days tend to be like fairly hectic events. Yeah, I think Zed loves being Danny's passenger. Right. Do I know of anywhere reputable in Ireland for a tune? I used to go over to Ireland years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, over there mapping. Not been over there for a long time. I don't know who the local tuners are over there, to be honest. It's a short hop over on a ferry to Anglesey or wherever, South Wales or North Wales. Meet me at pole position, I can map it, no problem. But I don't know the guys over there, so it's not the fact that I don't know anyone good, I don't know anyone bad either. So Joe, no problem, my pleasure. Right, notice you put up a poll about FSDI cold stumble. Could it be fixed if another tuner has his Ecotec license on it? Yes, you could take the information that I will do in that video, which I'm planning to do Friday morning, and tell him or her, if they're open to, suggestions as to what it could be. It depends whether they put race ROM on it. If it's got race ROM with the launch control and what have you on there, then you probably won't be able to access it with the ECU edit. If they haven't put race ROM on there and it's just normal Ecotec, then it is accessible. So yeah, it can be sorted. Right, thoughts on a 2.1 and an SG9. If you can get the heads to fit, then not a problem. The problem with the 2 litre heads on a 2.1 bottom end is the 2 litre heads generally are 2-pin cam sensors for the AVCS, and you've got a cam sensor at the front. On the Forester SDI, they're 3-pin cam sensors at the back. I know iWire in the States, I think, do a conversion from a 2-pin to a 3-pin, but it's a lot of work, in my opinion. I probably wouldn't go down that route. If I was to suggest it, I would say get a really strong 2.5 bottom end like the IAG short block 2.5 or EJ22, in which case the 2.5 heads will just bolt on and happy days. Alright. Is everyone setting up a meeting in the States? New York would be good, Joe. Yeah. We'll have a party in Central Park. That'd be awesome. Oh. Right, would I ever put a dyno at Triton's? I'd love to, but to do a proper dyno sale is about £150,000, and I haven't got that money. So unless you're volunteering to front the money, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. I'm happy moving around to different dynos around the UK anyway. It is Bournemouth is, you know, right at the bottom edge of the country, and it would limit the amount of people that would come down. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? I've done I think about 120 odd laps in Nürburgring. Fabulous place, awesome area. The roads around it are incredible, so it's well worth a trip if you ever get a chance. Right, any other questions? Right, any idea why I'm in limp mode every time I start the car? No code present. Right, your ROM. Let me have another look at your ROM, Callan. You mentioned about the secondary air pump. There's well, not hundreds. There's loads of codes for the secondary air pump system. Just want to make sure that they're all switched off if you've got rid of that system. Okay, Neil, your map, if Andy did it first, when the first owner got the car, I'm not sure that Race ROM was around then, so it may well be accessible using ECU Edit, admin version, in which case you can download and apply whatever changes I come up with, or if I can find anything to solve the problem, then, you know, you can apply that. Boom, 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 boom. Do I tune Sierra Cosworth as well? No. I have been known to tune other things other than Subarus. For example, a couple of weeks ago, tuned a couple of Toyota. What were they? Like Chaser and a Supra. Weirdly, they map very similar to how a Subaru maps, unlike an Evo, which is completely different. Sierra Cosworths, no. I've done Escort Cosworths or a Mark 1 Escort with Escort Cosworth engine in it. Occasionally, if you get me in a good mood on a day and it's an interesting car, then yes, but I haven't. Right, how's the Blitzen coming along? Update on that soon. There's no engine in it, there's nothing underneath it, or almost nothing underneath it. Everything's coming off, everything's getting sandblasted, getting powder coated. I've got Brembos, which are away, getting refurbed and repainted, and hopefully there'll be an update video coming soon on that. But I've got lots of other videos that are in the process. I've got lots of filming going on at the moment. So yeah, it's coming along, and I'm really excited about the Blitzen. I know, you know, I put the video up there. It's not had an awful lot of views because, you know, Legacy isn't an Impreza, so that's fine. But once it's coming to the sexy parts like the engine build and getting it running and mapping. It will be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Right, can you get much more by mapping when fully stock, cats included? Yeah. Yes. Most of the Subaru standard maps is like a European wide sort of 97 RON map, lowish boost, very conservative. There's generally a lot to be had. For example, let's say a Blob IWRX that is 220 horsepower, map in a standard car would normally get to about 270. A Hawkeye WRX that's 230 horsepower would normally get to about 275, maybe even a bit more than that. But the biggest improvements is the torque and bringing the boost in earlier. And because it's mapped, it will be safer mapped than running a standard car that is unmapped. Because, you know, as part of the mapping process, all the air fuel ratio is set up and tuned. The ignition timing is set up for what your engine wants, rather than you know, what was dictated at the time the engine was or the ECU was originally programmed. So it's like getting a tailor-made suit rather than a off-the-shelf Marks and Spencer's suit. You know, the tailor-made suit's always going to fit better. Right, that's what you need to, you know, most of the EJ22 blocks that I bought over the years have come from the States. There was a lot of early twin turbo Gen 1 legacies that were EJ22 blocks, and they're bulletproof. They're really strong. They will take a lot of abuse, an awful lot of abuse. Right, okay, Cyvex versus Link question. Right, I know Cyvex can do pretty good traction control along with DCCD. Can you do just as good with the Link G4X? The Link G4X is a good ECU, really good ECU. It's very modular. You can add bits to it, like the dashes and can control for various bits. But the Cyvex, in my opinion, it just beats all of them for functionality and what it can actually do. Knock control is incredible. Wideband control is incredible. Everything else that you can dream of deciding that you want, it can do. Like with the ECU on mine, which you've got. I don't know whether it was still in there at the time that I sold it to you, but I used one of the outputs to control a second rear wing, which would open up much like whatever his name was. Oh God, mine's gone blank. With the Cart Goodwood with the flappy panel things. Yeah, DRS system. So I used one of the outputs in there to do a speed related DRS system with an input from a G sensor. It can do everything, whereas the Link is very limited by what it can do. It's very good at doing what it can do, and it's very easy to set up, but it's a lot easier to set up than a Cyvex, but it's just a little bit limited in my opinion. Can you delete charcoal canister on a 93 WRX? Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. Most people, well, a lot of people that modify those are taking those off. What makes the EJ22 build so expensive? Block is rare. The block is rare, and you know it is the strongest block. The liners were like a mile thick. The the design of it and the stroke versus the bore is perfect. So it's got the torque, it's got the revability, it's got everything. The 2.5 is, is too big a piston in my opinion, particularly when you forge them it rattles like hell. They're very noisy engines, whereas the EJ22 piston is much smaller. Using the longer stroke, make it out to a 235 is perfect. Joe, I haven't had a look at the logs yet, but I'll have a look at those hopefully when I've finished in a few minutes after I've had a drink. But yeah, I'll have a look at those tonight, if not in the morning. Cylinder 4 cooling mod. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the cylinder 4 cooling mod. You might have seen that in videos that I've done. I've had abuse for it, like people that have spent the money on their cars having it. If it works for you, great, but I've yet to see evidence that it's making it better. It might be changing the temperatures, but I don't believe it, in my opinion. I've never needed it, and I think it makes it a lot harder to bleed the cooling system. Yeah, Travis Pastrana, that was the one. Yeah, so the Subaru that he had with the flaps that came up for braking, I didn't use it like that. I had a twin element rear wing with servo motors that opened up the slot gap just to reduce some of the drag, but the Cyvex was controlling that. Yeah, people are starting to know what it's really funny when I have people come up for mapping at the dyno. They say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Duncan, but I put a dump valve on it," or "I'm really sorry, Duncan, but I've got the cylinder 4 cooling mod." Not a problem, you do whatever you want. It's just if it's got neons on, I'm not mapping it. Only joking. Yeah, the Huckster, that was it. Right, okay, I think we're getting to the end of the questions. If you've got any more questions, self-tuning or any other questions, I know people just fire them over to me. I think I'll get back to everyone on YouTube, so if you've got a question, pop it in the comments below, and I'll reply. If you're not in the academy, have a look at that, consider joining that. It's peanuts every month, so if you want to join in, it's quite a big community in there now. So there's loads of guys from all over the world: South Africa, Australia, America, Canada, Europe, obviously England and Scotland. So yeah, have a look at that, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. The next live stream will be on Friday evening in the UK for the academy side of things, where I'm going to be going through how to build a base map for your car. So I will see you next time.